We are learning in the study of the 10 Sefirot, part 1, Inner Observation, chapter 4, item 77. Before we begin to study, let's hear Rav about the main topic of the lesson.
I am learning about things that are happening in me, happening in my soul. And if I reveal my soul in depth, I'll get there. So I want this to appear to me now, that I will know it, that I will be in it, in such actions. That's it. And what actions I'm reading about now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm also incapable of passing what I feel now, what I read about now, into my feelings about the friends and so forth. Just this general attitude that what I read is happening within me.
Now, we will learn together the study of the 10 Sefirot with Rabash. Again, the vessel of Chokhmah, which is phase 3, now has no light. It's called a record from the light of Chokhmah. And what shines now? The upper. When we speak of vessels, what is the last phase of phase 3? Phase 3 is now the last. What does it mean, last? She says, thus far I receive, more, no. 4 does not want to receive. Now that phase 3 has been refined, a different last phase shines. Which phase shines? Phase 2. We find that phase 2, which comes from the nature of the lights that shine in the empty vessels. So phase 2 should have descended to shine to the vessel of Zeranpin. Since in the vessel of Zeranpin there is a record, which is the level of Chokhmah, she doesn't want to receive it. She doesn't want to receive. Not wanting to receive is called striking. So who overcomes? Who prevails? The light prevails over the record. And the light wants to shine. And this comes through striking. And the depth of sparks fell from phase 2 to phase 3. You find that there are sparks of Bina in the vessel of Chokhmah. So in the second Patsuf, when the light of Chokhmah comes to the vessel, on the contrary, the light of Bina will come into the vessel of Chokhmah. There are already sparks of Bina there. So they have a place to unite there. So they have equivalence. Now the 10th kind. The 10th kind is the external vessels for the surrounding light. What is that? 77. The 10th kind is the external vessels for surrounding light. No surrounding light is received in a degree unless it is received from its upper phase, from its opposite phase in the Rosh. Hence, it needs a vessel suitable for this light. Meaning, the vessel should also be from the upper phase, from its opposite phase in the Rosh. If the degree is from phase 4, it needs a vessel that will be from phase 3. If it is from phase 3, then it needs a vessel to receive. That will be from phase 2, etc. Therefore, the vessels of surrounding light are called external vessels, because from the perspective of the vessels, it is always considered that the more refined is more external. Here we need to give a short introduction to what we learned. It's a little difficult, it's a little contradictory, but that's what he says. Each vessel in the goof, in the body, must receive from its corresponding phase in the rosh, in the head. Meaning, a coupling is made on phase 4 in the rosh. So phase 4 in the goof, it's on its corresponding phase in the rosh. If a coupling is done on phase 3 in the rosh, such as below of phase 3 in the rosh, and this is called internal, that it's the same degree, same stage. But when a coupling is done on phase 3 in the rosh and shines for phase 3 in the goof, and phase 3 now shines into phase 4, we find that phase 3 is 1 degree more refined than phase 4. Which is regarded as surrounding. The upper degree with respect to the lower one is called surrounding. It's the complete opposite of what we learned before. Meaning, on one hand, we learned that Patzuf Galgalta, which is the first level, regarded as Patzuf Ta'amim, taste, that came out first. There was a coupling on phase 4, and it shone up to the level of Keter. Afterwards, there was the clash of inner and surrounding. It was refined. It can no longer shine. Phase 4, which is called Ta'amim, flavors or taste. Where the light of Nekudot is called Chokhmah. To the point that we learn that the light of Chokhmah that wants to shine from phase 4, when it has a record of the level of Keter, it does not want to receive it. Why? Because it is from a higher degree. Here it says the exact opposite. In other words, if the coupling is done on phase 4 in the rosh, we say that there is a level of Keter, right? But which light does Nefesh have? Does Nefesh have? Only the light of Malchut. And in the Kli, the vessel of Zeranpin, in Parzuf Ta'amim, there was the light of Ruach. In the vessel of Bina, there was Neshama. In the vessel of Chaya, Chokhmah, the light of Chaya. And the vessel of Keter, the light of Yechidah. So now he wants to say that if we make the coupling on phase 3, which is the level of Chokhmah, but it's Ruach, It's called an upper degree. It's considered that now it fell into a coarser degree, which is phase 4. He calls it surrounding light. What is surrounding light? Since it is a more refined degree than the lower phase. On one hand, we learn that one is ruach and one is nefesh. On the other hand, we learn that this is the level of keter. Her record is only the level of chokhmah. This is very perplexing. Look again, 77. The 10th kind is the external vessels for the surrounding light. What is externality? What is coarseness? Coarseness means that the more coarseness there is, the more desire, which the more it can use the will to receive. Externality is called using less will to receive. 3 with respect to 4, 2 with respect to 3, etc. Look, 77. The 10th kind is external vessels for surrounding light. No surrounding light is received in a degree unless it is received from its upper face, from its opposite face in the Rosh. Hence, it needs a vessel suitable for this light. Meaning the vessel should also be from the upper phase, from its opposite phase in the Rosh. If the degree is from phase 4, it needs, when the coupling is done on phase 3, a vessel that will be from phase 3. And this she doesn't have. You find, from what does she receive? From a higher degree than her? More external? This is what he calls surrounding. It needs a vessel that, another example, if it is from phase 3, the coupling should be in the Rosh, also from phase 3. So he receives in the internality. If the coupling is done from phase, she needs a surrounding light, then which coupling is made? A higher degree. Then it needs to receive who? Her surrounding light, who is from phase 2, etc. Therefore, the vessels of surrounding light were called external vessels because there is always less coarseness there from the degree that is present. Therefore, the vessels of surrounding light were called external vessels because from the perspective of the vessels, it is always considered that the more refined is more external. And this is called surrounding light. This is the meaning of what he says. The above vessels come into the degree during the refinement. 78. These external vessels, which we call surrounding lights, are attained in the degree only by ascending to the degree above it. This is done during the ascent of the lights to the emanator, meaning during the dots, nekudot. During the nekudot, the dots, we say that each one receives from the surrounding light, meaning that phase 4 that was refined shines. Phase 3 shines, which is light of ruach. What does she receive? Surrounding. When phase 3 is refined, Now phase 2 shines. So Zeranpin 2 receives a surrounding. Zeranpin is phase 3. So now Neshama shines. It is regarded as surrounding. Then phase 2 departs as well when the light of Chokhmah shines, which is more refined. So Malchut receives a second surrounding. Zeranpin receives a second surrounding. But we say that since it is a thin looking in the Rosh, the thin looking in the Rosh does not expand downwards, then so Malchut does not receive any surrounding from it. You learned this. Do you remember? Student, yes. Rabash. It's not so much like in the surrounding light there are many interpretations. Here we say that what the lower one receives, a higher degree is regarded as surrounding, but if it receives it inside, when I say that it receives each part, and it says, I do not want to receive, it no longer receives. This is called surrounding. I don't have the vessels for it. Chapter 5. Here we're speaking of 7 discernments in the screen. 79. We've already discussed the matter of the screen. Items 63, 62 to 63. It is explained there. The screen is the boundary made after the restriction to receive the light only in the first 9 Sefirot and detain the light from expanding into phase 4, meaning into Malchut. As it says, you shall come thus far, but no further. What is written here? Ostensibly, what is the screen? He detains his desire so as not to receive. What is restriction? Detaining his desire so as not to receive. What is the difference between the screen and the restriction? About this, he comes and explains to us. Restriction is called a boundary, how much he receives and how much he does not receive. Restriction means he's receiving in general, but he's not, meaning he receives in a boundary, meaning the first 9 Sefirot, which are called above Malchut, above receiving in order to receive, meaning in order to bestow, he received. Afterwards, phase 4, which is called receiving in order to receive, this he does not receive. But the first 9 he does receive. This is called a screen that receives in a boundary. Thus far I receive. From here on, no. Whereas restriction receives nothing. Restriction and screen. A boundary is called, a screen is called a boundary. Thus, you can come thus far. What does it mean come? I do receive. A restriction receives nothing. Thus far you can come. Thus far Malchut receives. Who is thus far? Until her own phase, which is called receiving in order to receive. Meaning above her there is choice to receive in order to bestow. Her own phase, which is receiving in order to receive, so she doesn't receive it. Whereas I say restriction means she cannot receive anything in order to bestow.
The Masach means come thus far, meaning come, meaning it does receive. That's the difference he gives between restriction and a screen. We have to start again, item 79. Chapter 5, he learns 7 discernments in the screen. Item 79. We've already discussed the matter of the screen. Items 62 and 63. It is explained there, student, there is no essence of it. Here, Rabash. 7 discernments in the screen. We've learned the screen. What are 7 discernments? Item 79. We've already discussed the matter of the screen. It is explained there that the screen is the boundary made after the restriction to receive the light only in the first 9 Sefirot and detain the light from expanding into phase 4, meaning Malchut. It's called a screen, since the main boundary dwells only on phase 4, which is Malchut. Therefore, it is discerned that the Masach dwells corrected in the vessel of Malchut. Here in item 79, he said very, very quickly, there are discernments here that need to be clarified. In general, and afterwards, we'll then go and work within. First of all, he wants to clarify what is the screen. Simple. The screen happens after the restriction. The question is, what is a screen? Detains his desire to receive a limitation. What's a restriction? Detains his desire from receiving. What's the difference about these terms? What's the difference in saying screen or saying restriction? 1. He says here that the screen is a result of the restriction. Okay, so the restriction happened first and then the screen was made. What is a screen? He says a screen means a new form, something that didn't exist thus far, though there was already a restriction. So he explains the following. Restriction is, as we always learn, that he doesn't receive anything. Why? Because he wants equivalence of form, only adhesion. That's why he wants to receive. That's called a restriction. However, we say, who was the cause of the restriction? As we've learned, the cause of the restriction was Binah of direct light. Since Binah received light, since Chokhmah received light, and we've learned Chokhmah at its end, after she felt she received, she wants equivalence of form. That's why I'm saying I don't want to receive. Don't want to receive. So she didn't receive. And since he wants equivalence of form, the light of Chasadim extends by itself. to the vessel of equivalence of form. What then happened? We learn that since the light of Chasadim that Bina received nullifies before Bina as a candle in a torch, he says there, therefore Zeranpin came outside to its own degree. He learns it there in the study of the 10 Sefirot. We learn it differently. Each new form is a new phase. Turns out that Zeranpin, that light of Chasadim, Bina received the illumination of Chokhmah for him. Why? Since his will to do good to his created beings is to receive. Without it, it's impossible. So she received for him, who? Bina. The phase of Chokhmah by being equal face to face with Chokhmah. If she, the Bina, that wants equivalence of form, why did she receive the illumination of Chokhmah? We can say as a compromise that Chokhmah, as there is Chokhmah in Revelation, she doesn't want that. She only wants illumination of Chokhmah. In Zeranpin she will receive. Zeranpin at its end, since his desire to benefit the created beings is from above, rejecting the lower one to receive. So let's say, in a way that Zeranpin saw as if that his will to benefit the created beings was not in Zeranpin, but rather in expansion. Therefore, she went and received the light as it was in Chokhmah. Meaning, we need to learn each 10 Sefirot in one carrier. What's the carrier? Malchut. Until it went through 4 phases. We had a vessel called created being, meaning that it has no spark of bestowal, which belongs to the emanator. The upper one wants to receive, that belongs to the emanated being. No, and this is called emanation, and this is called a creation only to receive. But like Chokhmah at its end, we say that since every branch wants to resemble its root, thus it wants equivalence of form, it also causes in Malchut at its end, after she has received, she awakened in him as well, wanting equivalence of form. But there is one point, there's a difference. One, there was no restriction there yet, and here there was restriction. Meaning, there, Bina received light of Chasadim. And here, Malchut didn't receive anything. Why? There, Bina still hasn't received. She didn't emerge in terms of vessels of bestowal. What we learn, Chokhmah at its end, we've learned what is Chokhmah, where both the light and the vessel come from the side of the emanator. Therefore, she still doesn't do anything that could indicate any restriction. However, after she already wants to receive, then what she'll receive will be in order to receive, doesn't matter what light. If she receives light of Chasadim, that too will be in order to receive. Therefore, what did she say? I don't want to receive. But how will the thought of creation be? Not like Zeranpin? So she'll only receive in order to bestow. Meaning, in receiving in order to receive, I don't want to use the coarseness, this desire, this oviyut with these vessels at all. If so, how much will I use the vessels of the will to receive? As much as I can aim it in order to bestow. We see two differences between Bina and Malchut. One, in Bina there was no restriction, in Malchut, yes. Two, Bina received Chasadim, and Malchut couldn't receive anything. What she'll receive will be in order to receive. Three, she said, as if she had a new invention, what there is in Bina. Bina was as if the invention that she'll receive in Zeranpin. And as she saw it's inefficient, there has to be an expansion to bestow to the created beings. That was in expansion, not in Zeranpin. But what did she see? That he used vessels as much as she could aim in order to bestow. Turns out, what we learn afterwards, that there was a masach. What's a masach? Screen. I receive, but through limitation. I use vessels of the desire to receive pleasure, but in limitation. How much? As much as I can aim in order to bestow. That happens afterwards, after the restriction.
Indeed, a new thing is done. The restriction was immediately on that condition. What is that condition? When I cannot aim, I do not receive anything. When can I aim? When I can aim, I will receive as much as I can aim. This is called a screen and coarseness, meaning he does use vessels of reception. And this is called above Malchut. There's a question here. We say Malchut does not receive below Malchut, only above Malchut. It's in the middle, in the beginning, in the end. They divide this Malchut. Two receives the first three phases. Three phases is not, it's light. We learned the rule. What is a vessel? Only phase 4 is called a vessel. Phase, which is called the will to receive, is the created being. But the first nine are regarded as light. What does light relate to it? Did it receive light? Didn't the vessel receive? The light received? Didn't the vessel receive? Malchut did not receive, only above her, 3 phases. So we need to learn this. Below Malchut is called below the control of Malchut, below the control of receiving in order to receive. Below it, it must be receiving, it must be in order to receive. When I say above Malchut, means above her control, above reception in order to receive, meaning receiving in order to bestow. You find that the screen is a result of the restriction. And the restriction was immediate, and the intention when she could not aim in order, if she does not receive anything, how much she receives? When she can aim, you find that she receives the screen with a limitation. You find that the restriction receives nothing. The screen receives, but with a limitation, as much as it can aim. Now we'll see these things inside. I'm repeating 79 again. We've already discussed the matter of the screen. It is explained there that the screen is the boundary made after the restriction, meaning it does receive the light, the screen, not like the restriction that doesn't receive. It does receive. Except what? To receive the light only in the first 9 Sefirot and detain the light from expanding into phase 4, meaning Malchut, who is called receiving in order to receive. And it says, you shall come thus far. So the light comes and it receives it, but only thus far, not more. So we already know what is restriction and what is the screen. Now he says something more. Know that this screen is a consequence caused by the restriction, meaning by the departure of the light. Meaning, look, it is so because after the light departed completely from all 4 phases that are there, there's a question. If we learn according to the words, she does receive on the 3 phases. So when the light had to go to phase 4 and remain in 3 phases. But what do we learn? That all the light departed, although the restriction was only on phase 4. Because of it, a new form of desire was initiated only on Malchut of Ein Sof. Malchut of Ein Sof, which made the restriction as a new desire, meaning to once more draw the light by the force of the boundary. What boundary? Meaning only from phase 4 and above, not in receiving in order to receive, but only above it in order to bestow. And not from phase 4 and below, called receiving in order to receive. This boundary that was initiated is called the screen. Since this boundary primarily applies only to phase 4, which is called receiving in order to receive, which is Malchut, it is therefore considered that the screen is present and established inside the vessel of Malchut. But the vessel of Malchut does not receive it. Why? You must remember, Malchut is called receiving in order to receive. And Malchut, who she is called the vessel. When we say that a restriction took place, who made the restriction? Malchut. When we say she receives in order to bestow, who receives? Also Malchut. Except what? Each new phase, each new form is called a new phase. And therefore, we give it a new name, but in fact, only Malchut receives everything. She receives with a boundary, meaning a boundary of not receiving in order to receive. So when we say Malchut does not receive up to Malchut, up to Keter in Malchut, up to Chochmah in Malchut, how does it end? He says simply, until receiving in order to receive. She does receive, she doesn't receive. In order to bestow, she does receive. So the whole difference is between the screen and the restriction in the screen. You therefore find that if we say that in the world of Atzilut, he does not receive Ga of Chokhmah, but only Vak of Chokhmah, you find that the screen receives only a part. What is what she received in Ak called Ga of Chokhmah, not in the world of Nikudim. We learn that what she receives is called a screen. What she receives is called restriction. Accordingly, we understand that in the world of Ein Sof, when the first restriction took place, that it's forbidden to receive in order to receive. In the world of restriction, another restriction took place, a second restriction. With the light of Gal, we are also forbidden to receive, even in order to bestow. And what she does receive is Vak of Chokhmah. This is called the screen. The boundary in the Masach, again, the boundary and the coarseness in the screen come in it as one. 80. There are 7 primary discernments that we should make here in this screen. The first discernment is that the boundary and the coarseness are incorporated and come in it as one, without distinguishing between them whatsoever. Why? Since the boundary in it applies only to the coarseness of phase 4, what is 4? Receiving in order to receive. We find that it does not limit and detain the expansion of the light from a degree that does not have this measure of coarseness. Thus, the coarseness and the boundary come as one. And both together are called a screen. Both together are called a screen. It is impossible to speak of and distinguish the screen in and of itself, meaning when it is not incorporated with coarseness. For then, it does not exist in reality at all. So there is what to discern in it. In item 80. Direct. He tells us Look at the headline.
הגבול
The boundary
שבמסע בום כאחד.
and the coarseness in the screen come in it as one.
הוא אומר לנו נקודה אחת,
He tells us one point,
שאין עברית בלי מסך.
that there is no coarseness without a screen.
זאת אומרת פשטות.
Meaning,
מסך נקרא
put simply, a screen
שמעתי
means detaining one's desire. If there's no desire, what is there to detain?
שחגיה. או שחיים סיגוף.
Shadi makes a self-torment today. He doesn't smoke cigarettes. Can we say such a thing? If he is given, he'll say it's harmful. When he tell a shomer, it's a hospital, that it's harmful. On the contrary, he's happy that he's not smoking. But what is the screen? That he has will to receive, and he limits it. He uses it only with parts of the will to receive, which he can aim, with which he can aim in order to bestow. There he receives. And the rest he limits. It's as if he put a restriction on it. But a restriction is called negative, and a screen is called positive. I do use the coarseness. How much do I use? As much as I can aim in order to bestow. And this is called a screen. Therefore, I want to work inside again. 80. There are 7 primary discernments that we should make here in this screen. The first discernment is that the boundary not to receive and the coarseness, the will to receive, are incorporated and come in it as one, without distinguishing between them whatsoever. Since the boundary in it applies only to the coarseness of phase 4, we said that there's the will to receive in order to receive. There we can say detaining his will from receiving. We find that it does not limit and detain the expansion of the light from a degree that does not have this measure of coarseness, receiving in order to receive. So what does he limit? Where there is reception in order to receive. Thus, the coarseness and the boundary in the screen, which the screen does not receive, come as one, and both together are called screen. It is impossible to speak of and distinguish the screen in and of itself. What is a screen? It limits. What? Meaning, it is impossible to speak of a screen when it is not incorporated with coarseness, for then it does not exist in reality at all. So there is what to discern in it, which it limits itself so as not to receive. There's no limitation on this. There's no desire for this. On the contrary, he does not want it.